Hello, my name is Girvan, and this is my design proposal for The Loop, a master plan for Jakarta's Bay that encourages equity for non-human species as human and mangrove are kept within the loop to participate and co-create for future Jakarta. The design will be an experiment to develop a new way to plan Jakarta through human-nature partnership. Co-creation with mangrove will result in the fostering of the need of the people and the ecology, achieving climate resilience. Mangrove in Jakarta. Despite mangrove ecosystem is amongst the most productive ecosystem, they have diminished at a global rate of 1 to 2% per year due to human and environmental pressure. The country Indonesia holds 20% of the global mangrove population. However, the country has lost around 1 million hectares of mangroves since the 1800s. Java, its most populated island, has lost 75% of it. Zooming in, the project will be located on Jakarta on this island, the country's capital. Prior to colonization, Jakarta's Bay was ecologically functioning. The mangrove forest is recorded to reach 3 km inland, and they are the keystone of the habitat. The area that is currently called Muara Karang means reef estuary. Coral reef are protected from the shore sediment by mangrove, and shoreline is protected by erosion by the mangrove. The citizen of Jakarta's local wisdom includes the understanding that the people belong to the bigger ecosystem. Practices of nyadran, or offering to the sea, and kepenjagaan, the protection of the sea, encourages a stewardship of the natural system. This stewardship will maintain subsistence and bring ecological balance for future generations. However, current Jakarta has forgotten its wisdom. The ecological boom of 1970 onwards impact the mangrove significantly, and the land reclamation decree is put by the president on 1995, squeezing the mangrove population further. On 2010, land reclamation is proposed to house the growing population, including an engineered seawall project spanning over 1,000 hectares which relies on hard infrastructure to mitigate Jakarta's land subsidence, seawater intrusion, raising sea level, and tidal flooding. A necessity for design. Nowadays, the residents of Jakarta's Bay are separated and segregated from each other. The bay is rendered ecologically non-functioning and the mangrove population is slowly diminishing. The remaining mangrove is treated as commodities and not residents of the bay. The fisherman lives in the kampong, urban villages that is considered a slum in the city, and finding livelihood is getting more and more difficult as they are not involved in the planning process of the reclamation. Populations of middle class and higher class enters the site, being disconnected from the ecosystem and the bay, living in gated communities that relies on gutter and canals, a remnant of colonization. Despite this, the resident of the bay is faced with mutual problems. Issues such as the sea level rise, land subsidence, loss of livelihood, population growth, and reclamation is present on the site. There's a necessity for design that involves every inhabitant, redividing problems into mutual ones. The Loop. Hence, the Loop master plan will encourage the stewardship of mangroves, returning the bay to the forgotten keystone species of the ecosystem. The design will be an experiment to develop a new way to plan Jakarta through human and nature partnership. Co-creation with mangrove will result in the fostering of the need of the people and ecology, achieving climate resilience. The site will be divided into zones with different key strategies that encourage the stewardship of the mangrove. Zone 1 would be inland, the mangrove streets. The future streets will exhume streets and canals, liberating the waterways from the remnant of colonization. Mangrove then will infill the streets, repairing edges and take over spaces in the city, evolving typology as time progresses. Zone 2 will include the coastline. Fishermen Kampung will be fostered and enhanced as main ecotourism education center as fishermen are still passing down local wisdom of stewardship. Mangrove will be expanded throughout the coast and mangrove loop walk will be created to connect people and the bay. Zone 3, the sheltered bay. A new method of reclamation will be done, a method that includes all participants including the flow of water and sediment. Bottom-up gradual reclamation from dredged silt from the canals of Jakarta will be done, combined with ashes made from rubbish that clogs the waterways of Jakarta and mussel waste from the shellfish fisheries of the bay. This will produce a more gradual approach. As mangrove communities are established, the bay will return to its prior ecological function. Zone 4 will be the nature reserve as climate resilience center. Breakwater will still be necessary to protect the bay from king floods. However, breakwater is made as nature reserve with ecologically diverse complex edges. Opening is made to encourage species movement from within to out and outside of the bay. The increment of time in the planning are made corresponding to the maturity of the mangroves. The Loop master plan will begin by exhuming the main waterways and allow mangrove to be on riparian edging and green spaces. Shellfish reef will be made to allow fishermen to work closer to the kampong, reducing the need to go to the open ocean. Phase 1 of the mangrove walk will connect the coast edges, bringing people and ecology together. As time goes, streets can begin to adopt a new typology, allowing more mangroves to come in. Phase 2 of the mangrove walk will continue bringing sediment and allow more land reclamation, and more activities will begin on the mangrove walk. Finally, Zone 4 seawall and nature reserve would be established. Once the coastal defense is established, receding of the reef on the bay will begin. Zooming in, the role of mangrove as catalyst for the spaces is more apparent. The street currently hides water and is created only for fecal. Exhumation will begin and slowly mangroves and other original species will be given space on the street. The street remains constant, however, ecological system around it evolves, thus changing the typology of the street. The street will now include more inhabitants, serving not only as movement passages for people, but also for water and for species. This will also reduce Jakarta's subsidence as groundwater is once again recharged. Returning to the bay to its ecological function will also require mangrove as a keystone species. The floating walkways will not only serve as a wave attenuator, but will also be adaptable as sea level changes. As time progresses, sediment will collect and accretion will happen. More area can be created for the mangrove to inhabit and spread. Complex reef structure can be formed to encourage reef growth in the edges of the sedimentation. The mangrove walk itself will be a 12-kilometer loop with multiple stops along the way. Looking from the walk, it is shown that all species are now cohabiting and co-creating within the loop master plan. Mangrove co-creates with human as they are given spaces to flourish. The fishermen empowered and enabled within the site as the guide that connects the people and the bay. The middle and upper class communities given a connection to the natural system. The wildlife returning to the site cohabiting with the people. All inhabitants are now cohabiting and contributing to the future of the bay. Culture is encouraged, while climate resilience is still supported. Complex spaces are created, establishing different number of ecological communities, creating a diverse set of resilient communities. The top-down agenda of reclamation and seawall is reinterpreted through a new method that respects the equity for non-human species, an inclusive bottom-up method that synthesizes a new livelihood and human-nature partnership. The design experiment demonstrates how mangrove would relate with other inhabitants, show how site qualities would change over time, and foster local relationship of mangrove and people, addresses the sea level rise and reclamation project as a part of the outcome. The limitation of this design, however, would include design could not be discussed with communities and inhabitants on site. This would potentially change more micro-scale decision and how would the design outcome look like. The result, however, would be a research option to demonstrate how an alternative of living could be for Jakarta's citizen, human and non-human. Thank you for listening.